Welcome to Small Steps. My name's Seth Potts, and I want to show you how to reference workbooks, tabs, and cells. Most common what we do when we use a reference is probably just an individual cell. And a lot of times it's on that same worksheet, or it's in the same workbook, and you can flip tabs real quick to pull that up. Um, Kind of twofold. One is learning just what it looks like. So if you have something referenced in a different workbook, sometimes it looks real lengthy, and just so you kind of see and understand what that's pulling. But the other side is if you ever get to a point where you are referencing things so much, especially in a different workbook, uh, just knowing the setup of it could help you without having to go and find and open that workbook to reference a cell. Especially if it's, like I said, if it's something you're going to do regularly, it might be used more. But we're going to go through the steps of three different ones. So we'll start off here. The most common one is, I say we use this quite often, is referencing just a cell. In particular workbook and on this tab, on this sheet. We'll just go over here, and it's just an equal sign and whatever cell it is. In this case, it's A1. You could click on it or you could type it in. You click enter and you see everything that was on that cell is now in this cell. You see up here in the formula still is what you put in is equals A1 and not necessarily as text. So if I change this, this would automatically update. So that's the most basic of them. Sometimes, a lot of times for me, I'll reference something in the same workbook, but it's on a different sheet. A lot of times I'll do pivot tables, things like that on a different tab altogether. But I want to reference it in a cell. It's the same premise. You start with that equal sign. Now on this one, I could click over to this second sheet, this labeled sheet 2, and find the cell and click on it, and it'll put that whole reference in for me. Or, like I say, if I do this often enough and I just get used to typing it in, it is the sheet name. So you equal sign the name of the tab, so sheet 2, and then explanation point after that, and then this cell. So in this case, I'm just going to do this A1. You see it brings in the case number. Now looking over, I'll flip over that tab there. So the sheet 2, this is what it looks like. It's just small information that doesn't really have any true meaning here. Case numbers and accident dates, but just to show how it works. Along with that, so you can, just like you can with any other formula, you can actually click and drag that over, and it'll pull that information in. I don't know how far down it goes, but you see here, you can click and drag that down and it pulls the rest of those numbers. Pull it back up to here. One thing to note when you do that, those dates were turned into from the general formatting into that number there. It's as simple as highlighting it and going up and changing to whatever format you want. You can do short date, long date, time, whatever it is that you want out of it. You can just change the formatting there. It'll do that. So that is working within a workbook here. Whether it's on this tab or another tab, those are the two formulas you can use that help you do that. One that's probably used a lot less, as far as off the top of your head, typing it in, is when you're referencing another workbook. Now, you don't have to have another workbook open to be able to reference it. This right here, you can see this formula looks a little long, a little lengthy. It's honestly just a file path to get something that's saved on my desktop, and that'll differ depending on where you have things saved. If it's not just on your computer, if it's on a shared drive or whatever. And to be honest, if you're curious about what that would be, you can go ahead and open that other sheet and click equals on this page and click the cell in the other worksheet that you have, and it'll bring up this as a reference. So it'll lay it out for you. But we'll go ahead and go through the process here. And one thing I would suggest, if you do use something like this quite often, you have a sheet that you reference quite a bit. Instead of typing this all in, I'd go ahead and make like a shortcut. I have another video showing how you could do that, but just it's kind of like a autocorrect for spelling, where you can kind of put in your own little shortcut, and it would spit out this whole lengthy process. So even if you had different things saved in a singular folder somewhere, and you knew the names of the workbooks in particular, you could instead of typing in that whole file path, you can kind of auto save a little shortcut where you could just alleviate some of the typing by doing that. from here, go ahead and start typing here. It starts the same way, equal sign. Now you do put this little open quote at the beginning, or apostrophe, just a singular quote, and you put that after the equal sign. You start typing in that file path, and it's that backward slash between those. And let's see. All right. Once we get to this point here, it is naming the workbook. So far it's just the file path. So when you name the actual workbook, you do it open parentheses, or open bracket rather, and then name that workbook. This one's just named workbook 2. Make sure you put the XLSX or whatever the file type is of what you're opening, and you're going to close that bracket there. At this point, we go ahead and add whatever sheet it is on, whatever tab it's on. That workbook is just what we're going to reference is on the first sheet, and that is labeled as sheet 1 on that. And at this point, this is where you close that apostrophe, that singular quote mark there. So we have the file path with the workbook and the sheet, or the tab number there, and then whichever cell we're going to reference, we do this here. So after we close that quote mark off there, you will add an exclamation point. That is what separates the sheet from the cell. In this case, we're just going to do A1. But like I said, this is a lot to type in, so unless you do this on a regular basis, I would probably just wind up opening the other workbook altogether. But like I say, if it's a regular part of your process and you want to shorten a little, I would do something like this. I would just go ahead and make a shortcut for that. So we have that all in there, and you click enter, and you see it says crime type. So all this on that other sheet is just another one of those tables, just some sample data that I just made up. So same as the other, you can click and drag that. Let me see kind of how far down that went. Take those back. So then you format this however you want. But this workbook was it's not even necessarily open. It's just on another saved on my desktop. So as long as you have access to where it is, if you have something on this shared drive, but you're out of your office and you're not connected into it, you're not VPN in, that won't work. But as long as you have a connection to it, these references will follow that file path to wherever it is you are looking to get to. So, like I say, some of this more useful than others on a regular basis, but if nothing else, you can kind of see when you see something, maybe a sheet that somebody else gives you as well, and you click on a cell and it's got this long reference, you see why it's not working. Could be that you don't have access to where that's coming from. That's what these different references mean. If you found this tutorial helpful and would like to see more, click like and subscribe. The next video coming up is going to be over the text function.